Step onto the ice with one of hockey's most enduring icons, Christos Chelios. Born Christos Kostas. Chelios in Chicago, he defied expectations from the start, developing his grit in a city more famous for baseball than pucks. Through sheer determination, he blazed a trail across 26 NHL seasons, tying legends like Gordie Howe and Messier for the most years played. Along the way, Chelios set records for a defenseman with 1,651 games and racked up 3 Norris Trophies, 3 Stanley Cups, and 11 All-Star appearances. He showed fans that age is just a number, skating top minutes well into his 40s and anchoring franchises like the Montreal Canadiens, Chicago Blackhawks, and Detroit Red Wings. Whether leading Team USA in the Olympics or setting an example in the locker room, Chelios' ferocious play and unstoppable spirit carved his name into NHL lore. Dive into the captivating story of how this relentless competitor conquered the ice, became a pillar in American hockey, and refused to let anything stand in his path. Christos Chelios was born Christos Kostas Chelios on January 25, 1962. Growing up, Chelios didn't exactly fit the mold of a future pro hockey star. Sure, he had the competitive spark that a working-class Chicago upbringing tends to cultivate, but physically, he was on the smaller side, and he definitely wasn't in the thick of a well-established youth hockey powerhouse. Still, that didn't stop him from lacing up, grabbing a stick, and figuring out how to rise above the local limitations. His father, Gus, owned restaurants, and Chelios spent many of his teenage hours working odd jobs and soaking up the humility that comes from serving others before you chase your own dreams. Yet, as fate would have it, he discovered that the secret weapon inside him was a bulletproof will. No matter how big the obstacles, he'd find a way around, or more likely, barrel right through them. One of the biggest steps in his young life came when his family headed west to California. Suddenly, Chelios was suiting up in San Diego, playing junior hockey for the San Diego Hawks. Picture him skating under palm trees, with waves crashing on the beach not too far away, training for a sport so often associated with sub-zero climates. He was a bit of an oddity, a gritty Chicago kid in a sun-soaked setting. But that stint helped him get noticed by scouts who realized the kid had a spark. There was something unstoppable there. From the sunny rinks of SoCal, he took an even bigger leap to the Moose Jaw Canucks in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, SJHL. The weather was drastically different, but the passion was the same, and that meant Chelios was stepping into a crucible where hockey was life and everything else was background noise. He thrived there, impressing enough to earn an NCAA scholarship at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. To talk about forging your identity as an athlete, playing under Coach Bob Johnson at Wisconsin is a story in itself. From 1981 to 1983, Chelios sharpened his skills, learned discipline, and found that extra gear that all great players eventually discover. He won an NCAA championship in 1983, picking up All-American honors along the way. And keep in mind, he'd already been drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, 40th overall in the 1981 NHL entry draft, so the stage was set. Before diving into Montreal's system, he had a short stint in the USHL, making the first All-Star team, just to give everyone yet another hint of what was brewing. When he finally joined the Canadiens, you could almost hear the expectations crackle in the air. He dipped his toes in the NHL for a dozen games during the 1983-84 season. Then, in 1984-85, he kicked the door open, playing full-time and making the NHL All-Rookie team. Anyone who watched him quickly realized this was a new breed of defenseman, unafraid to jump into the offensive zone, but also perfectly willing to drop the gloves or flatten someone along the boards. He blended physicality with a skillful puck-moving talent that set him apart from the more one-dimensional bruisers. In 1986, at just 24, he helped Montreal win a Stanley Cup, anchoring the blue line with a famous cast that included Larry Robinson. It's hard to overstate how massive it is to win a cup in Montreal. That's like a direct pass to hockey heaven, given the Canadiens' storied history. By 1988-89, Chelios had bagged his first Norris Trophy, awarded to the league's top defenseman off the back of a 73-point campaign. Being named to the NHL first All-Star team that season was more or less a confirmation that he'd arrived as one of the league's elite. Yet, in June 1990, the unthinkable happened. Montreal traded Chelios to the Chicago Blackhawks. Fans in Quebec were stunned and outraged. Why give up on a Norris-winning defenseman in his prime? For Chelios, though, it was a homecoming. He was headed back to his Chicago roots, a city that was about to embrace him as a hometown hero. From 1990 to 1999, he played 664 regular season games for the Blackhawks, tallying 92 goals, 395 assists, and 487 points. He also amassed nearly 1,500 penalty minutes in those 9 years, an indication of just how hands-on he was with his opponents. 2 more Norris Trophies followed, 1993 and 1996, along with multiple first All-Star team selections, 1993, 1995, 1996. He led the Hawks to the 1992 Stanley Cup final, where they fell to the star-laden Pittsburgh Penguins, but fans adored him. This was their guy, wearing the captain's C from 1995 to 1999, throwing his body around, lighting up the scoreboard, and personifying the heart and soul of the franchise. But the NHL is a business, and on March 23, 1999, the Blackhawks traded Chelios to the Detroit Red Wings. You couldn't script a more controversial move if you tried. The fierce Chicago-Detroit rivalry ran deep, and yet Chelios suddenly found himself wearing the winged wheel. For Hawks fans, it was like watching your best friend join your mortal enemy. For Detroit fans, it was an interesting turn of events. But guess what? Chelios' intangible leadership and skill quickly won over Red Wings supporters. If there were any doubts about how much he had left in the tank, they vanished when he became a key cog in Detroit's 2002 Stanley Cup run. Imagine being 40 years old and logging top-pair minutes in the grueling playoffs, producing 14 points as a defenseman, and eventually hoisting your second cup. That's exactly what he did. His secret? A legendary fitness regimen that included hardcore cycling, weight training, and perhaps a bionic skeleton none of us know about. He would go on to claim another cup with Detroit in 2008, this time at age 46, a remarkable feat that left everyone else in awe. By the time he wrapped up his Red Wings tenure in 2009, he had cemented his status as a Motown hero, forging an unlikely but unbreakable bond with a city that treasures its hockey champions. Still, Chelios being Chelios, he wasn't quite done. At age 48, he signed with the Atlanta Thrashers in the 2009 to 2010 season. The idea was to provide veteran depth, but if we're being honest, it was also a testament to his refusal to acknowledge Father Time. He played only 7 games for Atlanta, mostly spending time with their AHL affiliate, the Chicago Wolves, to stay sharp. That cameo was the last dance of an NHL saga that spanned 26 seasons and left him with a gaudy stat line: 185 goals, 763 assists, 948 points, and 2,891 penalty minutes in 1,651 regular season games. If that weren't enough, he also set an NHL record at the time for most playoff games played: 266, with 48 goals and 96 assists in those postseason contests. It was as if every time you thought he couldn't push the envelope any further, he went ahead and did it. He called it a career in August 2010, stepping away with nearly every relevant milestone a defenseman could want. 3 Stanley Cups in his pocket, 3 Norris Trophies on his shelf, tied with Bobby Orr for the second most among defensemen, 11 NHL All-Star games, numerous first and second All-Star team selections, and a well-earned reputation as a physical force who could also spearhead the offense. Just 3 years later, he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, an honor that surprised exactly no one. By then, Chelios had become synonymous with longevity, leadership, and an all-in approach to the sport. A big part of what made him so special was that he wasn't just a team guy in the NHL. He was a pillar for Team USA as well. While some might consider the U.S. an underdog in international hockey's storied history, Chelios joined a generation that flipped that script. From his first Olympic appearance in 1984 to his last in 2006, he donned the stars and stripes in multiple tournaments, most notably captaining the 1998, 2002, and 2006 Olympic squads. He earned a silver medal at the Salt Lake City Games in 2002, anchoring the defense at age 40. His presence also loomed large at the 1996 World Cup of Hockey, where the U.S. staged a dramatic comeback to beat Canada in a best-of-3 final. In every international tournament he entered, Chelios was the living embodiment of no quit, the type of competitor who might have lost a tooth in the first period and still tried to leap back onto the ice without missing a shift. After retirement, his gravitational pull kept him in the hockey orbit. He served as an assistant coach for the Detroit Red Wings from 2015 to 2018, honing the next generation's defensive instincts. He also chipped in with Team USA at the 2016 World Cup of Hockey and the 2018 World Junior Championships. It was only fitting that he eventually returned to the Chicago Blackhawks organization, this time in a more corporate ambassador role starting in 2020. Despite spending so much of his prime in Detroit, he's always made it clear that Chicago is the city that shaped him. "I bleed red and black," he once said, and ironically, Red Wings fans adore him just as fiercely. That's the duality of being Chris Chelios, bridging two rabid hockey fan bases who should be at each other's throats but can't help but admire the legend who wore both jerseys. Then there's the broadcast work. With a career so storied, it's only natural that networks brought him on as an analyst. Fans quickly discovered his blunt, tell-it-like-it-is style, sprinkled with the credibility that only a multi-decade veteran can wield. He never tried to sugarcoat sloppy play or hype a storyline he didn't believe in. While that might rub some people the wrong way, others found it refreshing, a reminder that he never shied away from speaking his mind, just like he never shied away from flattening an opponent in front of the net. If you followed his personal life, you'd find a rootedness that contrasts nicely with the hyper-competitive side of his persona. Married to Tracy since 1987, Chelios is a father to 4 children, Dean, Jake, Kaylee, and Tara. Dean and Jake both ventured into hockey careers, with Jake even making a short appearance in the NHL for Detroit. It's a testament to the family's closeness that Chelios, despite his intense schedule and famously demanding fitness regimen, remained a pillar at home. He often credits Tracy for keeping him grounded and supporting a career that saw him move from city to city and, eventually, across decades of ever-changing NHL landscapes. Speaking of that fitness regimen, it almost became the stuff of legend. Teammates half his age were left gasping as Chelios churned away on a stationary bike, often leading team workouts well into his 40s. He famously took up long-distance cycling around Detroit's suburbs, refusing to slow down even as the birthdays piled up. Former Red Wings teammate Henrik Zetterberg once admitted that Chelios was borderline superhuman in stamina tests, effortlessly outlasting guys who'd grown up idolizing him. That dedication to physical excellence was crucial in allowing him to avoid major injuries throughout his career. Considering the hits he dished out and absorbed, it's remarkable he walked away from the game in one piece. Let's talk about controversies, because no story like this is complete without them. Early in his career, Chelios partied hard, which some critics pointed to as a potential downfall. Instead, he dialed it back as he got older, funneling that energy into training. Then there was the firestorm of being traded from Chicago to Detroit. Hawks fans felt betrayed, while Detroit fans initially weren't sure how to welcome a longtime rival. But time and performance have a way of mellowing out the harshest judgments, and eventually, both fan bases recognized that Chelios was simply following the path the NHL presented to him, and winning a couple more cups in the process. Over the years, the league recognized him with 11 All-Star Game appearances. He was named to the NHL's first All-Star team 5 times: 1989, 1993, 1995, 1996, 2002, and the second All-Star team multiple times: 1990, 1991, 1997. For a defenseman who played with such a nasty edge, those are extraordinary accolades. Tallying 3 Norris Trophies is no small feat either, especially when you consider that he nabbed one in 1996 at age 34, making him the oldest player to earn the award. It speaks to how his game evolved. He never stopped finding ways to stay relevant, effective, and, frankly, dangerous to opponents. When you look at the broad strokes of his NHL path, you see neatly defined chapters: Montreal, 1983 to 1990, Chicago, 1990 to 1999, Detroit, 1999 to 2009, and that brief final stand in Atlanta, 2009 to 2010. In Montreal, he was the rising star, capturing his first cup in '86 and first Norris in '89. In Chicago, he was the conquering hero, consistently topping the defensive charts, seizing 2 more Norris Trophies, and leading his hometown team to the Cup final in '92. In Detroit, he became a veteran leader among a constellation of stars, Lidstrom, Yzerman, Shanahan, winning 2 more Cups, 2002, 2008, and playing quality minutes well into his 40s. Finally, in Atlanta, he was the elder statesman, still chasing the game simply because he loved it and believed he could still contribute. The numbers are staggering: 185 goals, 763 assists, 948 points, plus 351 plus minus, and 2,891 penalty minutes. He also recorded 144 points in 266 playoff games. By the time he hung up his skates, he'd logged the most games by a defenseman in NHL history and was 6th all-time among all skaters. The remarkable part is that it's not just quantity. There was also quality in every step. Each city he left behind spoke of him as a transformative player, whether that meant leading by example, setting a new tone for defensive play, or mentoring younger talent. And in 2024, the Blackhawks plan to honor him in a special way with a Ring of Honor, further solidifying the bond that overcame any lingering bitterness from that 1999 trade. On the international stage, Chelios was a lightning rod for American hockey. If you grew up in the 70s or 80s, you often heard about how Canada or the Soviet Union dominated the game. Chelios helped shift that conversation. Team USA loved his passion and relied on him heavily during the Olympics. 1984, 1998, 2002, 2006, where he served as captain multiple times, and in events like the 1996 World Cup, a shining moment for American hockey as they took down Canada. In 2002, at the Salt Lake City Olympics, he served as an almost mythic figure, leading a U.S. squad that fell just short of the gold in the final against Canada. He was 40 then, but on the ice he battled with the intensity of someone half his age, refusing to let his team crumble under pressure. It's no surprise that whenever U.S. hockey officials needed leadership in coaching or developmental roles post-retirement, Chelios was on the short list.